Good evening or good afternoon, depending upon where you are. My name is Paul Felsen. I'm a proud graduate of Weequahic High School, class of 1967. The Weequahic High School Alumni Association, under the auspices and direction of founding executive director Phil Urish, class of 1964, and Myra Lawson, current executive director, class of 1970, there's many wonderful things involving communications, bulletins, keeping alumni connected, and scholarships for worthy students funded entirely by donations from former students, teachers, and friends. The association may be reached at weequahicalumni@gmail.com if you'd like to be added to their mailing list. Every Saturday, I get a newsletter from them. It's terrific. I urge you to sign up and join. Today, their efforts bring to us an opportunity to catch up with and hear from one of our very best in a unique and engaging manner and format. Before I forget, if there are any questions you'd like answered during the webinar, please enter them by clicking the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. So think back for a minute, if you will. Think back to June of 1967. Our graduation was June 20th, 1967. So a couple of days ago. What were you doing? You're getting ready to go to the prom, thinking about going to college, what it was going to be like, or finding a job, or maybe you were just driving up and down Chancellor Avenue between Burgerama and the Bunny Hop, like I was, along with my friends. Well, we all knew the likes of Dennis Layton, Dana Lewis, Billy Maynard, and their teammates were bound for glory. Who really thought, and be honest, that among us was a budding fellow 1967 graduate that would become a renowned psychologist, gerontologist, speaker, entrepreneur, CEO, consultant, documentary filmmaker, and the author of 18 books. Just think about that for a minute. That's probably more books than most of you have read when you were in high school. 18 books. In addition to appearing and featured on 60 Minutes, Oprah Winfrey, and the Today Show. Tonight, we got a peek behind the curtain to hear firsthand how someone we all know got from here to here. It is my extreme honor and pleasure to welcome a friend of us all and a fellow 1967 graduate who has made us all very, very proud. Now, you may remember him as Kenny or Dyke, or perhaps you knew him as that slick shooting guard from the YMHA National Championship team. But here he is, my friend, Ken Dychtvald, PhD. Ken, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Paul, or as I used to call you, Fast Eddie. So thank you, everyone, for coming to this hour. It's going to be a little bit different and in some ways, perhaps more interesting than what some of us usually do for an hour this time of day. The way this is going to work is, in a moment, I've been asked to show you a few pictures from my life's journey from Weequahic on. And then I've got my two children, Casey and Zach, who are going to be my interviewers, and that has never happened before. So, and they have assured me that they're going to make me uncomfortable. And then we're going to open up for a few questions from you guys, and then we're going to sign off on the hour. So well, after being together an hour. So let me see if I can pull this off. Let me share my screen. And this is just a little bit of memory lane here. So, hold on. So this is my brother, Alan, and I. Alan is on the call. I talk to Alan every single day. We're very close. I have no idea where we were. I think that might be Brookside Swim Club. And I just can't help but take note of the outfits we were wearing, which I think I don't know what we were doing. So this is my bar mitzvah night at the Chanticleer. In the morning was the B'nai Jeshurun. This will be 1963. My mom, Pearl, my dad, Seymour. They managed to have 71 years together before our dad passed away. He was doing pretty good his last decade. He was blind from macular degeneration, and that made him angry. And our dear, loving, wonderful mom had Alzheimer's disease for her last 12 years. But who would have imagined their later years back then? So some of you folks on this call were in this picture. Yeah, we had a great high school, amazing basketball team, Weequahic, the best in the country. And so those of us guys who couldn't make that team, we all played for the Y, but we had a pretty strong team. And as some of you guys will remember, we won the state championship. I know there's a number of you from the team. I know Rube's on the call, Tal's on the call. We've been in touch with Kenny Teitelbaum lately, Mike Frank from Hillside. And then we went on to win the regionals. And yes, we won the national basketball tournament for Jewish community centers throughout the country. So that was, I got to tell you, in many ways, that was some of my fondest memories being a part of that Y. This was my high school graduation picture. And I would have to say at that point in my life, I just thought I was going to always be this kid, a little more older version, and probably living in the neighborhood somewhere, maybe a burb or near Newark. This was a picture that I just pulled out of the yearbook. It was called the Top 10. And I'm not sure how many of you on this Zoom call will remember all these people, but I think we're all still alive and going on. I see Rita Beerbaum, who I know is on the call. Hi, Rita. Rita lived in the same house as my girlfriend, Fern Polinsky, whose father was a butcher and her mother didn't drive. And that was kind of a block away in the neighborhood. Now, Fern was one of the first of us to pass away a long time ago. Then I made a right turn. And it was not expected. You'll hear a little bit more about that maybe in the questions. This is me in California, attempting to be a musician and kind of a hippie guy. And this was the me that I thought would be forever. I took up residence in Big Sur, lived in a little cabin, was a yoga teacher, and was writing my first book, Body Mind, when I was 22.
That looks like it could be an album cover, I'll tell you. That's a great picture.
Or something. But then I met a Jersey girl, Maddie Kent, graduated from Milburn High. Her parents, both Weequahic alumni, no longer alive, either of them. We got married in 1983, the first time, and you'll hear what I mean by that in a minute. Zach was in Maddie's belly at the time. Casey was 2.5. We spent Reagan's 79th birthday with him on a private island in the Bahamas. There's my mom and dad. There's our two little ones right after Zach was born. Baby naming celebration and here in our home in California. I got lucky for a few years. I started landing on magazine covers. This was Inc. magazine. I was probably about 40 at the time. One of my favorite mentors in my life, this was President Carter. I had the good fortune of working with him on a book, his Virtues of Aging book. And then he asked me what would I like in payment, and I asked if I could build a house with him. So 4,000 of us descended on Houston. We built 100 houses in 5 days. President Clinton was kind of a cross between, I don't know, Albert Einstein and Elvis Presley. You know, he was kind of a hound doggy kind of guy. Got to meet him many times. This was my 60th or 65th birthday party. Maddie and I have gotten remarried every year in a different location. So we've been remarried 39 times. This is us getting remarried by the Maasai tribe outside of Nairobi. Here's the whole family. You'll meet the kids in a minute. I'm a lucky guy. I managed to have, I've had a loving, most days, great marriage, fabulous kids. And here's Casey and Zach being Casey and Zach. We had the good fortune of meeting President Obama. He was a gorgeous being. We got married Huichol one year in Mexico, and this was right after the ceremony. And this is me now. So I'm going to go out of stop sharing. I know it's a little self-indulgent, but it has been a bizarre and kind of irregular adventure. Many days great, some days not so great, but I'm going to take a moment to introduce my two children, and then they're going to, they've got some questions to throw at me. Well, let me introduce Casey first. Casey was our first child. Casey's 34 years old, grew up here in Orinda, California, went to the Annenberg School at USC, then got herself involved in grand scale production. For many years was the global head of production for the Creators Project and staged 10, 20,000 person events in Brazil, in South Korea, in France, and all kinds of places, and then was sort of recruited to run a piece of Fashion Week, and then decided to reboot herself, and she went back to graduate school, went to London School of Economics, and now she's got a very spectacular job managing membership and programs at the Soho House in Hollywood, West Hollywood. Zachary is 31 years old. Zach left us to go to school in New York at Columbia. He became, in his final year, he told Maddie and I that he felt the 21st century was going to have a lot to do with China, and one could not understand that in English or in America, and that he was moving to China. And we told him, well, you don't speak the language. He says, I'll learn. You don't know anybody. That's my problem. And you have no money, and we're not going to support you. And he says, I'll figure that out. And Zach has spent most of the last 10 years living and working in China. He's mastered Mandarin. And then a few years ago, he came to a perspective about the emergence of a new China that he felt the world was not seeing. So he wrote a spectacular book called Young China and formed his company, Young China Group. He has been an advisor and speaker on 5 continents. His girlfriend is Chinese. She's not allowed in the United States. The Trump people did not renew her visa. Zach's not allowed back in China. So they've been living sort of in exile in Mexico for most of this last year. So, it's up to you guys. I'm not sure who's got the first questions, but here we go.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us to be a part of this. Zach and I are thrilled to be here. We're gonna dive right in. So, I believe the majority of the people on this call know you from high school. After high school died, you attended Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. And somewhere along the way, something, and I remember this from the stories you told me and also from your book, something sparked you, and you were compelled to basically leave and go to the West Coast to Big Sur and start a whole journey there. So we're very curious to know, what was it what was the spark that brought you to the West Coast?
Yeah, so let me say that I when I left high school and decided to go to college, neither of my parents had been to college. Most of our friends' parents hadn't been to college. So I applied to Tufts, MIT, and Lehigh. I got in early acceptance, and I thought, hey, that'd be great. Rube's going there. Kenny Teitelbaum's going there. It's an hour and a half away from home. And I didn't really particularly, I thought I was going to become a physicist. I didn't really love it. And in my junior year, I had to take an elective. And the dean said to me, you need to take something in the social sciences. So I said, I don't know. He said, take a psychology course. I didn't even know what psychology was. So I wandered into this class being taught by the hip, cool professor, by the way, who's on this call, Bill Newman at Lehigh. And it was sort of the psychology of human potential. And the very first book was The Varieties of the Psychedelic Experience by Masters in Houston. And I thought, whoa, what is this? Psychedelia. And then the next book was about consciousness, psychotherapy, East and West by Alan Watts, the philosopher. I thought, wow, this is way cool. And then there was a book by Abraham Maslow called Toward a Psychology of Being about how we could actualize. And it was one after the other. And I have to say, it was the biggest case I had ever really considered. The idea that we had all these potentialities, whether they be mental, physical, creative, artistic, sexual, spiritual, and that we were only using maybe 4 or 5% of those. And that idea just kind of blew my mind. And at the end of that semester, I tuned in, turned on, dropped out. And I left Lehigh and I relocated at Esalen in Big Sur. And I would tell you that when I flew from Newark Airport, I had never been west of Pennsylvania. I had never been in a workshop, never been in psychotherapy. when I got off the plane in California, and it was the summer of love, and I saw the beautiful hippies and beautiful people and all of that. And then I took that ride down Highway 1 that some of you maybe have taken, and I landed at Esalen. And the very first workshop that night was being taught by the guy who the movie Bob and Carol Ted Alice was a spoof of. And within 15 minutes, he asked all of us to take off all our clothes and start encountering each other. I was a long way from Weequahic. But
let's take a breather real quick.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive in more into Esalen. First,
Okay.
everyone, thank you so much for joining. As Casey said, it's a total pleasure. I'm the other one, so nice to meet all of you. Before we jump in more into Esalen, I definitely want to get there. I would encourage everyone to consider questions. The only question we have so far is about one of your girlfriends, and we can dive into that if we have to. But if anyone has any other questions, definitely fire away, and we'll get to those at the end. There's only so much Casey and I can sort of guess at. Talk to us a little bit, Dad, about Esalen in the 1970s. For those who weren't there, this was not the era of social media. This was not the era of sharing every moment of our lives on Facebook. So transport us there. What were some of your first encounters, and what were some of your lasting memories?
Esalen is 14 acres on cliffs over the Pacific Ocean with natural hot springs and waterfalls, and butterflies come to breed. And I used to think if I came down the driveway at Esalen and there was a unicorn that met me at the gate, I wouldn't be completely shocked. At that moment in time, it was sort of where artists from Europe and psychotherapists and theater professionals and actors and writers were all coming because they heard that there was this notion brewing of we were going to create some kind of a transformed, better world. And so Esalen was partly the gorgeousness of the place, but it was also all these experimenters with psychedelia and music and sound and rhythm and touch and meditation and things that are now called mindfulness. And, I began my 4-hour-a-day yoga practice back in that era. And so it was this sort of gathering of about 150 people. By the way, if you watched Mad Men, in the very last episode, to my surprise, when Don Draper seeks a way to discover himself and find a new vision for communications and advertising, he's at Esalen in the same month that I arrived. It's also where the Big Sur Folk Festival was filmed. It was a free-spirited time. Make love, not war was a lifestyle. It wasn't just a phrase. We were completely removed from media and technology. We took a lot of time to pay attention to each other, play music, sing, dance, and try to figure out how the mind and body and spirit could be enriched and brought to a higher level. I know right now, you guys, it probably sounds like cornball stuff, but that's what the scene was.
How far
And
did
I was
it feel
probably
from
the
Weequahic?
youngest. I was probably the youngest guy there. It was mostly 30 and 40 and 50-year-olds kind of dropping out. And Tim Leary and Ram Dass and all these kind of characters were on the scene and in my crew.
Did you realize what you were in the midst of while you were there?
It felt very special. It felt very special. And the media was beginning to kind of become fascinated by the idea of mind body and eventually holistic medicine. And, Andy Weil used to hang out there before he became Mr. Healthy Aging. And Andy had done his doctoral work on psychotropic drugs from South America. So I knew Andy well. And yeah, we all felt this is kind of, wow, aren't we fortunate to have kind of found ourselves and away from the turmoil and the war and the protests. And yeah, it was sort of an entitled thing, but yeah, it felt pretty darn special. I didn't know where it was leading, but we did think it was like, if you've ever read science fiction and Arthur Clarke's Childhood's End, it winds up with the idea that there's like a new level of consciousness emerging. And I know it sounds really flaky to talk about today, but we kind of felt we were on the hunt for that.
So, okay, we want to dig in here a little bit more, but I want to make sure that we're also conscious of time. So you left Esalen at some point. I want to quickly sort of orient orientate everybody with how far away did California feel from Weequahic at that point? What sort of encouraged you to span that distance? You know, we forget how far away the coasts were then, you know? So how far away did you feel? And then what had you stay in California? And then talk a little bit about meeting our mother, if you wouldn't mind, finding love, because I hear that she's from the other side of the tracks in Jersey.
Well, so there's some dimensions to that, to my answer, Zach. How far away from Newark and Jersey and Weequahic? Like I was on another planet. No overlap pretty much at all. However, because I was in, and I'm going to say honest truth, thousands of hours of encounter groups and sensitivity training and stuff that started at 7 in the morning and went on right through the night for weeks and months and then years, I realized that so many people had grown up in abusive communities and with unpleasant deals with their parents and terrible sexual abuse. And I thought, wow, I grew up, I had buddies, I had friends, guys and the gals, we looked after each other, we had each other's back. I felt a sense of deep appreciation for the strength of my childhood. I didn't expect to leave Big Sur, Zach. I thought I living in a cabin. It cost $150 a month. It was in the mountains. It was by a river. It was a dump. But I thought, wow, I have found my home. And then, you know, Big Sur was a crazy place. It was not only hippies and gypsies, and psychotherapists and actors and Tim Leary type people, but it was also outlaws. And so one morning at 5:30, bang, bang, bang on my door, a guy shows up. It looked like Clint Eastwood on acid. And I said, who are you? And he says, who are you? I said, I live here. He says, well, I'm the landlord. And I've been living in New Zealand. I'm back. I want the house. And I said, no, I got a lease. And he pulls out a gun and he puts it to my forehead. And he says, you're leaving now. And so I got sort of thrown out of my house and I lived in my van for a while. And then I got connected with a project that was going to start in Berkeley that ultimately we made up the phrase holistic health because we needed to conjure something up for who we were trying to be. It was an academy of human development. And I worked with some spectacular women. And one of the women, Gay Luce, her mom was having cardiovascular and hypertension issues. And she said, what if we tried meditation and Tai Chi and kind of stuff that you're into, Ken? And her mom got better. And so we turned our entire project to a focus on aging. And I've spent the last 47 years of my life deep in the field of aging. And if it weren't for Jan Brewer putting a gun to my head and kicking me out of Big Sur, it probably wouldn't have happened. In terms of meeting Mom, by the way,
What year was this? Just so we can orient ourselves here. So Clint Eastwood on acid kicks you out.
In 1981. I got thrown out of Big Sur in like 1974.
Also, sorry, Dad. I was just going to say before you start to talk about how you met Mom, I think there's some interesting things you're pointing out here. So being in Big Sur and being exposed to all these different types of people who are really exposing themselves and opening up, we got to imagine it probably felt pretty different than the upbringing that you had in Newark and even, you know, Weequahic High School. Like, what did that feel like, sort of having the childhood and then the high school experience that you did and then transitioning to something so radically different? Can you speak a little bit to what it was like to grow up where you did and go to high school during the time that you did?
Yeah, I got to tell you, you know, it's been more than a half century now since we all said goodbye on graduation day. And a few of us have been reconnected these last few years, a few of us guys particularly. But as I've lived this life, I feel so far removed from the Jersey me. But I feel it's so deep in me. You know, I remember playing ball till one of our moms called us home at night. I remember hanging out at, you know, Maple Avenue School in the playground and waiting for the ice cream man, you know, good humor guy. His name was Lester, to come around. I remember dancing at the Y and watching Tal master the mashed potatoes, you know. I remember great gals that we grew up with. And so honest truth is, it's almost like I feel like it was I hate to use a cornball California phrase, almost like a rebirth, a kind of a metamorphosis. I felt like there was the me in Jersey who somehow found himself becoming the me in the human potential movement, and then ultimately the me in gerontology. So it felt really different case. You know, I associate my time growing up as pretty straight and narrow. I wasn't a wild and crazy guy. I kind of just wanted to get good grades and be a good friend. And our parents worked hard, you know, they didn't come to our games and they didn't do our homework for us. You know, we just were kids growing up trying to succeed at something. I got big ideas at Esalen because the people I was hanging around with had written books and they felt that they were going to change the world. And they, you know, I became friends with the women who created sort of the, you know, the Boston Women's Health Collective, the women that created sort of the modern self-help movement. And so I got the idea that I could maybe be a person that could do something big. I wasn't thinking that way when I was growing up. So it wasn't just the hippie, the free love, the naked, the California thing. It was the, could I possibly do something important with my life? And could I possibly have something to teach, something to share that would have a chance to impact history? And I was very taken by, I had the good fortune of meeting people like Joseph Campbell and Ida Rolf and other folks who had, you know, Moshe Feldenkrais and, you know, and Swami Satchidananda, and who had shaped fields and areas of knowledge. And I thought, you know, maybe I could be somebody like that. I hadn't felt that way growing up in New Jersey.
Quickly, since we're in this time of your life, one of the questions, where did you live in Newark?
We lived in a section called the Weequahic section, which was in a particular section of Newark that was sort of almost like a suburban area compared to, let's say, downtown Newark or down Neck or somewhere. And I didn't really know it was different than where everybody else lived. You know, you watched Leave It to Beaver on TV, or you watched the kids on American Bandstand. There was no internet. There was no FOMO. You didn't see other people's, you know, lives anywhere. It was just like what it was, you know. And we happened to live until I was 5 in the same, it was a duplex with a border on the 3rd floor with my grandparents on Lehigh Avenue. And then my dad placed a big bet on himself and he bought a house with a GI loan on Vassar Avenue, which was just near Maple Avenue School. It was a really pretty gorgeous house. But some of our friends lived in duplexes. Some of the folks on this call, some lived in 4 family houses. And we didn't really pay, I can honestly say that I don't think we paid much attention to what anybody's fathers or mothers did for a living. We just kind of had each other's back and we tried to do good in school, and we felt our parents really wanted us to make something of ourselves. Remember, this was post-Holocaust Newark. And so there was really this sense, particularly in the Jewish community, that education was really important. And we're going to sacrifice our lives, our parents thought, so that you can maybe go to college and make something of yourself. That was, for me, a lot of the way I remember those years. Maybe other folks remember it differently. I'm thankful for that, by the way. I'm very grateful. Yeah.
We're going to arc back to it. I'm looking at the questions, by the way, and we're starting to get a little bit of activity there. We're going to arc back to this, but we do want to earmark religion. We do want to earmark sort of your neighborhood, but let's try to get the full arc of your life as it's developed over the last stretch. So how did you become a sort of 27-year-old in the aging field? Talk to us a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I got sort of tossed out of Big Sur, and then I got involved in creating this human potential curriculum. And then at the last minute, Gay decided, let's just work with older people. And we were in Berkeley. And so I was going to be teaching yoga and Tai Chi and breathing and meditation and journal writing and a little encountering. And then we had all sorts of people wanting to, like, Stone Soup Fable. Well, somebody knew a little bit about Eric Erickson, lived in the area, and he and his wife Joan helped us talk about adulthood and maturity. And someone else, a guy named Robert Monroe, had written a book about astral traveling, and he came to be one of our instructors. And so we started creating this whole kind of academy. And the project became very successful, and the NIH started funding us. By the way, I was earning $3,000 a year. So I never really had back then an ability to make money or even understand how to make money. But the project became very successful, and we started getting asked to set up similar projects all over the world. And Gay really didn't like to travel or public speak. And she says, Ken, how'd you like to give this speech? And Ken, why don't you do that? And Ken, or Kenny, I think she called me, why don't you speak at that conference in Washington? Why don't you become an advisor to the Office of Technology Assessment? And so I got lucky. And before I knew it, I was writing books about aging. But more important, Zach, I was in the presence of old people. And remember, I had been previously in the presence of gurus and psychologists and famous artists and actors and playwrights. But now I'm in the presence of old people who look like old people. But when they reflected on their lives, there was a wisdom, there was a perspective that I was enchanted by. And I remember one little, and I'll be quick, little assignment. I was making stuff up. I said, hey, all you guys, we met in a circle once a week for 3 hours. And then they all had assignments of meditation and Tai Chi every day. And we started working in nutrition and so on. I was friends with Nathan Pritikin and a guy named Pablo Irola, who was a big guy in that world at the time. I asked them to map their lives out on a graph paper. They said, what? And I said, yeah, and bring in some pictures of who you used to be. And they did. And so here were these 80 and 90-year-olds bringing in pictures when they were my age, and they didn't look like old people. They were young people. And I thought, how knuckleheaded am I? I think old people were always old people. They weren't. Life is like this arc, you know? And then they showed us their graphs, and some of the years were miserable and some were fabulous. And they talked about regrets for not pursuing their passions. And they talked about the love of their life, who they let get away, or they talked about the joy of being a parent. And I thought, wow, here I am 24, 25, and I'm learning from these elders the game of life. And so I really felt, Zach, that it wasn't so much that I was teaching them stuff, but I've somehow been given this gift of spending years and years and years and years and years with old people who were showing me the contours of life. And partly what I came away from that was they taught me that on the one hand, you want to be present, but on the other hand, so go slow, don't be in a hurry. And on the other hand, it's going to be over like that. They said to me, tomorrow, you'll be 70 years old looking back. And I thought, wow. So I've lived with kind of an intensity. I've parented with an intensity. I've pursued my work and my marriage with an intensity born from that exposure. Long and short, by the way, I got weary of the not-for-profit sector. I began to see the demographic shifts coming, and I conjured it up that there was an age wave on its way, and we were not prepared for longevity or 5-generation society or a redesigned marketplace or communications or media or tech or medicine. So I spent the last 35 years now with our company, which, you know, I started with Mom. We've had about half the Fortune 500 as clients, and I keep learning. I mean, every little assignment we take on, or every massive assignment, or president calls me up, I feel like, okay, chance to learn something. By the way, I would say that from Weequahic, there was a teacher that some of us had. I didn't know she was a great teacher at the time, but there was a teacher named Sadie Rouse, and she always said, always be a learner, always be trying to, you know, learn something new, be curious. And that's been part of my mantra for this life.
You started, you know, after Weequahic, you were, well, actually at Weequahic, you were a basketball player. I hear you were a mediocre to good card shark. You studied to be a physicist. You went on to be a yogi. You transitioned into gerontology at a young age. How did you move into business? And what would you say is the high of your career? And then if you'd be willing, what would you say is the low?
Sure, but I'm going to first sidestep to an earlier question, so that because it belongs in this answer.
Great.
I was a single guy during the free love era, and that was cool. You know, I was Mr. Body Mind and Mr. Yoga Practice, and I had hair down my back, and it was a different world out here in California. And then, but I started feeling lonely in my early 30s, and you know, this was pre-HIV. It was pre, you know, fear of sex. It was, you know, Erica Jong and Fear of Flying, who, you know, we've all met. it was really very much that era here and maybe everywhere, but I was never a cold caller. I met people. By the way, someone asked me if I dated Ellen Wall in high school. I did not. It was Fern Polinsky and then Nancy Kruger. I had met your mom. I knew about her because she went to Milburn High, and I had heard about her in high school, that she was smart and attractive and kind of cool. And I met her at a party once that Felsen brought me to in Miami. And so I had heard she was an actress, that she was moving to California. And I thought, I'm going to call her up and talk to her about Jersey stuff. And I did. And she had no recollection of ever meeting me. She had no interest in me. But she said, well, maybe we could talk some more. We got some things in common. And so for the next half a year, we just talked on the phone almost every night and kind of fell in love as friends. And then we got together. And 2 years later, we married in our home by the singing rabbis of Marin. And the night of our wedding, I felt so in love with your mom that I said to her, I love Marin. We do this every year. And she said, people don't do that. And maybe it's a little bit of the Esalen in me. I said, well, I'd like to do that. And she says, okay, let's make it interesting. Let's do it someplace different every year, on Thanksgiving. But every year when we get remarried, let's stop and reflect on how we've done. And are we doing okay? And am I a good husband, or am I missing it as a wife? And so it's been kind of our punctuation point. Mom and I didn't have any money when we got married. In fact, we were $40,000 in debt and 100% broke and had no savings. And so I had to try to figure out a way to make money. And I thought I don't see myself understanding business, and I don't really jive with a lot of the capitalistic stuff. So I thought I could be a communicator and maybe get paid for that. And then I'm going to try to talk about this age wave. And Mom created all the visuals, and we became a team of kind of words and music. And before we knew it, Zach, people started calling up Age Wave. Hey, we'd like to hire you. I'm Lee Iacocca. Hey, I want to send my jet out tomorrow. I want you to talk to me about demography and the aging of the population, because we don't understand that. And I said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. You teach me, I'll teach you that. You teach me business. So Iacocca became my mentor, and Lou Gerstner at American Express, and Ed Willard at DuPont. And so I began to become captivated by business as sort of a alchemy, as a magic trick, or as something I could learn a little bit of and maybe be able to earn a living. And ultimately, to your question about successes and failures, I think the successes had to do with the coming alive and being able to insert, make up a word like elder care and have an entire field of elder care grow out of that, and then come up with a concept of healthy aging, and then have all the managed care and insurance entities in America want to take guidance from us, and creating the first geriatric medicine education, getting paid for that. And so I began to find that I could try to do good things and get paid for it. I ran into some problems though, son, and I know you know this, but I got a little carried away. In the 90s, I began to think, oh, look at all these people creating mega companies. I can do that. And so one company wasn't enough. I said, I'm going to create a life source nutrition company focused on clinically proven foods to improve heart health. And I'll create an advertising agency, Age Wave Impact. We'll create health stores. We'll open them up all over the country. And I started raising tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And then the internet came along, and you couldn't raise money for a newspaper or an advertising or a health store. And one by one, everything failed. And it was rough, because I thought myself as a success, and I wasn't. And Mom and I lost everything, and we had to try to put it together all over again.
Thanks for that, Dad. So we definitely have a few more questions that will kind of help frame your life as a whole. However, just being mindful of the time, there's so many good questions coming into the chat. I want to get into those in a minute. Before we do, we have a couple rapid fire questions that I'm going to ask. The idea behind rapid fire is they're just quick. You don't have to think about it too much. Just give a quick answer, whatever is top of mind. and we'll get through them quickly. There's just a few. Ready?
Yeah.
All right, cool. What's your favorite ice cream?
Coffee, Haagen-Dazs.
What's somewhere that you've traveled that surprised and delighted you?
Hundreds of places.
Okay.
For example, love the waters in Bora Bora. Love the gorgeousness of the food and style in Italy. Love the chaos and madness in Tokyo. Love visiting Zach in China. So the world to me is like, wow, my parents never traveled, Case. Once I began tasting the world and different cultures, Vietnam, Halong Bay, you know, different foods, different people, different rhythms, different smells. I just can't get enough of it.
Best music album of all time.
Temptations' Greatest Hits.
I love that.
By the way, the best performance I ever saw.
Yeah, that was the next question.
All right, Prince.
Best live show you've ever been to.
Prince.
Awesome. You've met 5 presidents. Which did you admire the most?
Jimmy Carter. I thought that George Bush Sr. was a gentleman, a patrician, a thoughtful guy. I thought Clinton was a brilliant guy, but damaged. I thought that Obama was gorgeous. I didn't really interact with him much, just met him. Great being. Reagan, I was not a Reagan fan, but the time we spent with him, I was captivated by his love of certain dimensions of the American experiment. But Jimmy Carter was I'll say one thing, I know it's not rapid fire. When we were building a house, here I am, the guy never stopped working. 7 in the morning, it's 102 degrees in Houston, hammering away, sawing away. And on the 4th day, we were running slow on our house, and there was 100 other houses running slow. So President Carter asked me, we went up on the roof and he starts hammering faster. And then almost like the movie Witness, everybody starts hammering faster. And all of a sudden, 4,000 people are speeding up their work pace. And we got all our homes done on time. And the last morning, the president and I were putting in the toilet for Wade and Shalina Gibson. And I'm thinking, wow, this is the former president of the United States, and he's putting in a toilet for a low-income African-American couple. So he's a deep guy. He was a special guy.
What's your favorite way to spend a Sunday?
Being with mom, working out a little bit, catching up on my work, a little bit of yoga, hoping that you guys will call us, make it, and that you're not in trouble, hearing good news, that you're okay, and talking to my brother. And
what was the best and worst part of the COVID lockdown for you?
The best. I didn't travel for a year and a half, and I hadn't really struck me. I spent the last 40 years of my life on the road, 100 days a year, Hong Kong, London, New York, Chicago, back and forth, up and down. And so being here in our home, we have a beautiful home, working out every day, having kind of a quiet time to think, being in chrysalis mode. Who can we possibly be coming out of this? That was the best part of COVID. The worst part of COVID was Trump. I just felt that I'm not going to go. I'm sorry if I'm going to disturb anybody's politics. I thought, what have we done in America to have elected a rodent to our White House? And the instability of the world, the dishonesty, the absence of truth, the terrible struggles of so many people, the awakening to how there's so much inequity in our country, and even being, so entitled, the white guy, to realize like, oh man, this has been happening on our watch. We've allowed the world to turn into a junkyard. People of color have been treated so badly in so many ways. It was like, the bad part was the realization of how much wrong there is in America and in the world, and the feeling that rather than retiring, I want to be a part of trying to make it better.
And I don't know how this last one snuck in there, but who is your favorite child?
My
You don't have to
favorite
answer that. You don't
child.
have to answer that.
It's the third one. It's the one we don't know about.
I don't. I want to do. I want to say this though, that I've been blessed. I had loving parents. I got great brothers. My best buddy. I've had crazy success in work. You know, by the way, after those terrible failures, we did put ourselves back together again. We've had a wild ride these last 20 years. I get to work with amazing people, many of whom are on this call. Elise Pellman, who's the president of AgeWave. But I got to tell you, all of the money, all of the success, all the presidents, there's something about being your guy's dad. That's the best.
Someone
It's just the
shouted
best.
out.
I never would have imagined being a father. And I don't know what it's like to be a father in general, but being your dad, as you guys have gone through your madnesses and getting you out of trouble and hearing your dreams and your hopes and getting tuned into modern age from both of you and feeling your heartbeats stands apart.
Zach, would you like to ask some of the questions coming up in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at first I want to say thanks, Pop. We feel the same as your kids. And without getting too much of a cheesy on-air moment here, but it's true. It's a pleasure for all of us. And I do think this transitions really well. So you talked about earlier how at a very young age you got to talk with people later on in their life and sort of see what mattered to them in retrospect. You've got a lot of fans of your work here and are looking for guidance now that you're no longer recent Weequahic graduates. There was a great question, I believe it was from Naomi Lampf-Gelfen. Forgive me if I'm butchering your name. Can you state your philosophy of aging and longevity? And if you can do it in 15 seconds, we'll give you a big prize.
Never try to do it really quick, but I'm going to try to do it really quick. I do believe that we live in this ecosystem of life and we have a certain amount of time. And there are certain ways we can influence our health and aging and other things that are out of our control. Either they're genetic or they're environmental or they're systemic. But we have a great deal of ability to influence ourselves. You know, I haven't eaten meat for 35 years. I've had a 52-year yoga practice and I try to meditate every day, although I'm terrible at it and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think that the idea of life is not just to be young forever. I think, you know, I'm kind of an Eric Erickson student, that there are stages we go through, and the mature stages have to do with the articulation of wisdom, generativity, which is about giving back. And then Eric and Joan talked about transcendence in one's later years. And so I do believe that there's a role and a purpose for elderhood. It's not just about trying to be youthful forever. I also want to say that I become increasingly attuned, Zach, to the idea of lifespan. I'm on the board of the X Prize Foundation. So, you know, that's sort of these Craig Vender, Elon Musky kind of people. And I had a dinner last week in LA, my first business trip. And there's a lot of talk about, hey, we should live to 150 or 200. I'm not in that camp, you know. I'd like to see health span come closer to lifespan so that we have abundant health, mental, physical health, no dementia, no cognitive loss. I was, as you know, when I was 30, I did a book with Jonas Salk, and Dr. Salk told me about how when poliomyelitis was rampant, people thought we need more iron lungs, and he thought we should stop the disease. There are some diseases like cancer and heart disease and diabetes and Alzheimer's and such that I would love to be a part of bringing forth solutions so they're not a part of our future. I'd love to see a healthy aging, but also one in which we mature. And frankly, I just finished an op-ed piece for the New York Times today. I hope it gets placed. I really think that we who are elders, and there's now 1 billion of us in the world, by 2050, there'll be 2 billion, ought to be devoting a big chunk of who we are to giving back, to helping to fix the world, to help the young, to mentor children, to mediate in families. And so I think there's great work to be done as an elder. I don't think the idea of just simply retiring and now you can just have a vacation 24/7 for 30 years, I don't personally subscribe to that. I think that, yeah, having a lot of time to play and relax is great, but I think time to contribute and make a meaningful impact on the future and future generations is a part of what I subscribe to. By the way, we've only got, I know, 8 or 9 minutes here, but as you guys asked me this last question, would you mind if I was joined by somebody here in this seat? Matt, would you come on over?
I'm going to ask a quick question because I think
Yeah.
it's funny and I've never heard you talk about it before. So it's from Alan Wurtzel, Dyke.
I remember Alan Wurtzel.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
I sure do.
Of course. He says, Dyke, I apologize for being a little off topic, but how did it feel being the captain of the patrol boys in Maple Ave School in 1963? Did it kick your ego into high gear?
Well, first of all, let me introduce everybody to Maddie.
Hi.
Maddie and I are both 71. We've been together for almost 40 years. I know some of you guys, and Rube and some of the people on this call, and Paul, you've been together almost 50 years. It's kind of amazing. Maddie and I got started later. Alan Wurtzel. So I'm going to tell you the truth, and you'll get a chance to see just how neurotic I am, even with all this personal growth stuff. So yes, my brother had been, and I was the captain of the whatever it was. We had this like cross our chest thing, and you had to you can cross the street now. But here's what I remember, Alan, and you're going to remember this, unfortunately, probably. Right, Dychtwald's still a screwy guy. I thought I was on my way to getting the citizenship award because every single captain of the school patrol won the citizenship award for since the beginning of time. But I guess I was a rambunctious guy and I didn't get that award. And so I remember thinking, wow, life doesn't always give you what you're hoping for. So that's what I remember about that I liked doing the work. I liked that I had a sense of authority, but I remember that I didn't get what I thought was a reward for it. And that I like to feel I've grown out of some of that, but not all of it. Thanks, Alan. Nice to know you're
Next
well.
question is from Pat Ford. There's actually a question from the wonderful Don Macon asking, how did you raise such wonderful kids? We'll skip that, but thank you, Don. Pat wants to know, how did that transition from the Newark Jersey boy to the Esalen yoga man frame the foundation of your lifelong development of radical curiosity? Radical curiosity, of course, being the name of your new and wonderful book about your lessons in life in the rear view.
So I'll answer by saying, first of all, Pat is a friend, not from Weequahic. Pat was the chairman of Burson Marsteller Worldwide, and I turn to him from time to time as I dream up big schemes and projects to get his counsel. We have worked together over the years. The honest truth, Pat, is that I really felt that it was sort of like, and I'm going to use a word that I don't mean for it to be like a religious thing. I felt like it was sort of an awakening. I felt like I'd been sort of asleep during most of my growing up years, in a perfectly wonderful way. I was a good kid. I had great friends. But when I began to meditate, or when I began to do biofeedback, or when I was in my first encounter groups, or when I began to learn the language of the chakras, and I thought, whoa, there's so much. I feel like sort of somebody had turned the burners on. And so the honest truth, by the way, I'd like to feel that since then, and by the way, I do want to say that this memoir that came out a couple of months ago, I call it a sort of memoir. All of the earnings from it are being donated to Esalen Institute. And the book I published last year, from which the PBS special, which is airing on NET this weekend, came. All of the earnings from that are being donated to the American Society on Aging. I want to be clear that I'm at a stage in my life where I'm really trying to be generative, as Erickson would say. But I think that when we landed on the word curiosity for the book title, I began to realize that we don't celebrate curiosity. There's so much attention to success or abundance or wealth or keeping up with the other kids. Or I thought, wow, curiosity is about wonder. It's about awe. It's about being a lifelong learner. It's about, what do I not know? What can I learn about China, Zach, from your perspective? KCU, modern music and style and attitude. Or Mom is working on a book now. It's kind of about ageless aging. She's been on this hunt for decades now about what are all the things about the gut biome and brain health, because Maddie's mom also had dementia. So I feel, Pat, that the curiosity burner, frankly, got turned on by two of my professors, Don Mankin and Bill Newman, who I'm still friends with, who are on this call from 55 years ago. And I was lucky to have people. I've had teachers all along the way that have always said to me, you know, maybe you ought to learn about this, or why don't you read that book, or you don't understand the brain properly, or here's how revolutions happen. And I have found that curiosity feeds me. And I actually am even at a place in my life where I feel a little bit bad for people who are not curious, who feel like I know it all, or I don't need to learn anything more. I'm 75 years old and I'm just going to keep repeating the same routines over and over again. I think that curiosity should be more front and center in our education and our families, and especially as we age.
Agreed.
We've only got a couple minutes here. Do you have any final thoughts for the Weequahians around the United States, around the globe? I mean, it's been decades since you were there, but there's no doubt how large a role Weequahic and that community played in your worldview. You know, it was a launch pad. What would you like to say to the Weequahic community and the Jersey community at this moment?
I think what I want to say is thank you. It may have been hard for people, and I might have been ignorant. And I know that as we integrated during the years we were in Weequahic, that we might have been just plain ignorant about the challenges that so many kids or families were going through. But I got to tell you, I just feel that our childhood, I just have so many deep and wonderful memories of so many of you people. And you know, even on Facebook, when I see Beth Simon's beautiful grandkids, and I haven't seen Beth now for, you know, forever, other than at our reunion. And I, you know, when I see that the gals from our group are still friends, or some of us get back together again, or I read about Kenny Music's photography, I think, I don't know, I just feel this, I know it sounds bullshit, but it's the total real deal. I just feel like, wow, it's like from another life, but I am so grateful to have grown up with you guys in our neighborhood. And I want to say, in case you didn't ask me this, but at Bunny Hop was my preferred place to eat, and Indian Pizzeria, if you would ask me what were my favorite restaurants growing up. And I would also say that if there was an attention to celebrity or it wasn't on our radar, it wasn't on my radar, that there was a kindness and a vitality and a decency about our families, you know, staying over Larry Fisher's house, being close with his mom, Beulah, and Jeff Colvin's dad, Rube, who would have to sleep during the day because he was up early in the morning delivering fruits and vegetables. And I mean, I don't know, it's when I saw Barry Levinson's work, I related to it a bit, but I don't know, I feel gratitude, Zach. So that's all I can think. I can feel gratitude, and also an apology. When I began communicating with Phil Urish, I realized that because our era was a particular thing, I have not been that active in Weequahic High School graduates in the last 30 or 40 years. So we've begun contributing to help those kids get to college and those kids get some breaks. And I would even encourage all of you guys to not just think about Weequahic as our Weequahic, but there is a neighborhood still there and it's still attempting to flourish, and maybe we can play a role to help bridge it to a better future. Paul, you want to close this out?
Yes, Dyke, that was great. Thank you. For those of you
I'm
who
called
missed
Ken
any
these
part,
days. I'm called Ken these days.
not in my house though. For those of you who missed any part of this, or just want to watch it again and have fun with it, it will be on YouTube next week. The Weequahic Alumni Association will be sending out a link. On behalf of all of us and all of you, I want to thank the Weequahic Alumni Association. Special thanks for their participation and for their love, Casey and Zach, and you too, Maddie. Thank you for jumping in there. It's good to see you. But most of all, a thank you to Ken. I'll do it the right way, as you preferred. I thank you to Ken for really opening up and showing us a side of you that that few people get to see. And I know it was an emotional experience for you. I can tell by the look in your eyes. So thank you very much for everything. We love you. Take care. Stay well. Thanks again to everybody. Bye-bye.